Tu lo fai tutti I giorni.
Sì, in italiano. In Italia.
All right, Brian, we are good to go.
Buongiorno a tutti, benvenuto. Welcome to another Dalla Terra deep dive. In this case, we're diving into the Alps. We're diving into Valtellina, and we have our friend and collaboratrice, Cristina Scarpellini, with us. Ciao, Cristina.
Ciao, Brian. Thank you.
All right. So thank you very much for joining us today. We talked about doing a seminar on Valtellina with a deep dive into Scerscé, into the winery that Cristina founded. And we've worked the bugs out in the last year of doing these things. Tu hai già fatto tanti di questi Zoom, quindi sei un'esperta.
Yes, really? In Italian, not in English, but so
well,
good
you've been doing
today.
your English online. You've been doing your English online for a year,
yes.
So that's good. And but no visits here to the U.S. So we thought we would bring you to the U.S. remotely in this fashion. And first of all, I want to thank our team at Dalla Terra, specifically Ben and Carly, that help pull these things together on such a beautiful and regular basis. I'd also like everybody to know that that just tuned in, that all of this will be posted afterwards at the Dalla Terra YouTube channel. Go ahead and, as everyone says, hit that little subscribe bell or whatever the heck. We will not overwhelm you with stuff, but we put out there should be interesting. And we are also going to post a copy of the presentation, that like what's on the screen right now, to dallaterra.com in our sales tools portion of our website. So you can go ahead and get the full written copy of this, the full digital copy of this for future reference. So you can pay attention to what Christina's going to be talking about, and not so much about taking all the notes. So we're going to cover a lot of ground, and we're going to try and keep it moving today as we move through a lot of things. We're going to cover a lot of ground because I think there's a lot of ground to be covered, but I think we can't assume that anyone is very familiar with this area, and specifically with this winery. So we're gonna cover a lot here, and this winery, this region, this idea is a real departure for Dalla Terra. A departure in terms of the size of the winery, a departure in terms of the recognition, let's say, of the region. Most people are not familiar with Valtellina. And so the first question is, why would Dalla Terra want to do this? Why would we take on this project? And if anyone's looking at the screen, that's why. It's right there. That's why we're going to take on this project, because it is one of the most compelling and stunning regions that you can ever visit. It is unique in all regards, and it is a region, I think, that I fell in love with and had to find a way to make this happen. Not everything that we do has to be familiar and is counted in cases. And some of it's unfamiliar, and it's a journey, and it's an exploration. And this is really why we love what we do. Okay, there's a cat that's walking for the neighbor's yard. This is really what we're about. And so as we dive deeper into this, we're going to share with you something that my imagination is that most people are tuned in today out of curiosity. It's like, well, what is Dalla Terra bringing to us now? As opposed to, because they're all good friends with Cristina, who hasn't really had that much of an opportunity to travel here in the United States yet. So this is perhaps one of the most extreme wine growing regions in the world. It's only like 25 miles long. And yet, as you're going to see in a little bit, it's got 1,500 miles of walls that have been built by human hands over thousands of years into these super steep, incredible vineyards. And I mean, look at the walls of this place. Look at the detail. It's a mosaic. It's a tapestry. And the wines that come out of this place are extraordinary. So before I pass the word over to Cristina, just to give you a quick overview, Carly, can you go back to the image that had Sondrio, that kind of a yellow map and the map of Italy on it? That one right there. So you can see in the top, just to give you guys an idea what we're talking about, the valley, which is on the bottom here, is an east-west running valley. And it flows down to Lake Como. On the top part, where you can see the little red dot on the map there, it literally borders right up to the Swiss border. So north of Sondrio is Switzerland. And it is just an amazing little piece of heaven, an amazing slice up there that's tiny, that they've been making wine there for literally a couple thousand years. It was brought in and welcomed into the UNESCO recognition, with UNESCO recognition. And those are some of the reasons why we wanted to do this. And the wines are extraordinary. The wines are nothing like this was made anywhere else on the planet. And then the question was, how do we find our collaborator? How do we find Cristina? How do we connect? Because it's for us, part of it's about the wine, and a lot of our relationships are about the people. They're literally relationships with families, the philosophy, and who we're working with. And we found that match with Scerscé and with Cristina. And we talked to some other friends in the region. They said, that's the person to talk to. Sei tu sei la persona giusta per noi. And so we got started, and it's a relatively unknown area. And so we had an opportunity. And I think both Cristina and Dalla Terra are first and foremost ambassadors for Valtellina, for the region, because nobody's very familiar with it. And then second of all, as we dive down deep into this specific winery and the philosophies. Okay, that's enough of me. I didn't get invited on this show. Cristina did. So Cristina, ti passo la parola, and I will, maybe I can just ask you a few questions. First of all, welcome. Grazie. And it is a treat and a pleasure to have you with us. And maybe we can begin with a brief introduction to you specifically as a person, and how you came to this place, and more specifically to Tenuta Scerscé.
Perfect. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to this seminar. For me, it's a pleasure work with Dalla Terra, because Dalla Terra is so passionate about Valtellina, but really serious in the job, in the work. For me, it's always very interesting to tell the Valtellina thanks again. You will forgive me if my English is not perfect, but it's an occasion for me to improve every day my English. I'm wife and mother of 2 children, and after my study in Paris, because I'm graduated in law, I meet Valtellina. But why and when I meet Valtellina? I returned to Italy only because I had to complete my legal apprenticeship, and I attended after the court for 2 years, but I immediately realized that the environment was not for me. So I looked for a job in Milan, and I started a collaboration with a firm that deal with internationalization. Specifically, contracts were developed for large projects, airports, road network, etc. And then it happened through a national confederation to follow a development project for winery, including a company from Valtellina. The story from here, you know it, because I started my winery in 2008. Every people ask me why I start this adventure. So I think sometimes sometimes things happen in life that no one can predict. I would say by coincidence. I strongly believe in coincidence. And when my client offered me the possibility to rent an hectare of vineyard in Bianzone, in the upper Valtellina area, I say, okay, it's a new adventure, but initially was for a hobby. Is now my job, but I understood almost immediately that the future for me would be viticulture, because I'm passionate about it. My family is passionate about wine. I think all Italian people is passionate about wine, but in my family we respiro the wine, in particular Nebbiolo, because my father is passionate about Nebbiolo. The Tenuta Scerscé is born in 2008. The winery is located in Tirano, in the middle Valtellina. Is the famous place because we are the red train, Bernina red train, that connect St. Moritz to Tirano. This route between the Alps is a UNESCO heritage site. We are building in 2018, 2019 the new cellar, but with the COVID time have expanded. Okay, I hope in 2026 when Valtellina will host the Olympics games. So I invite you for all for a toast in the cellar. I hope it is finished by that year. Okay.
Fantastic. So to summarize, Cristina came from a small town in northern Italy. She was not born into this. On the contrary, she left her town. She moved to Paris, studied law in French in Paris, got her degree, and then worked in pretty much an all-male environment in one of the most, let's say, challenging areas of the world, because she was working in Syria. She was working in some very, very interesting countries in the Middle East that have changed a lot in the last few years. But she's no stranger to challenge, and she can find her way just about anywhere. And so it was really this the surprise of the wine bug and this little opportunity to lease just a little bit of land to explore that kind of blossomed, like a seed was planted and it grew up into taking her over. It totally encompassed her. And now this is her sole focus for her, besides her family and her kids and stuff, obviously. It's a great, beautiful, beautiful story. Prego.
Yes, in my opinion, it's very interesting to speak also about the Fondazione Provinia, if you want, for to explain better that the history of the foundation. But for me, it's important to know the goal of the foundation, because it's a link with the territory. Since 2017, I have been president of Provinia Foundation, and the foundation take care of the protection of the Valtellina vineyard landscape. The work that I have strongly wanted for this board of director in these 3 years has been to raise the Valtellina by recognizing its real value. I explain better. The first step was obtain the UNESCO recognition for the art of the dry stone in 2018. In fact, Valtellina is the largest terraced vineyard area in Italy, and I think also in Europe, but I'm not sure. We have 2,500 kilometers of dry stone, in miles 1,500, and the dry stones walls support the terrace and therefore our vineyard. and is an extraordinary millenary work that began more than 1,000 years ago, precisely because of the need for livelihood agriculture. You think normally every family have 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 square meters of land.
You mean hectares? No, you mean meters. It's
meters.
Measured, you guys, in meters.
It's meters.
There is so little arable land here. In many places, let's take Alto Adige. I think like 3% of Alto Adige is actually planted because most of it is so steep, too steep to plant. Well, Valtellina, they said, okay, we have the valley floor, but that's not so great for vines. We really need to be up on the slopes and specifically on the northern slopes that face south, right? The ones that are going to get the sun. So there's a tiny, tiny part of Valtellina that's actually, that ideally would be good for vines. And the problem is that they were all cliffs. They were all pretty steep slopes that even in Alto Adige, very few people even try and plant there. And yet here in Valtellina, over thousands of years and 1,500 miles of these individual walls, they have built these vineyards into the slopes. And it is incredible. I mean, just walking up these slopes, I don't care if you run marathons, this is hard work getting up and down these slopes. It is serious work. And so it's all along this southern facing slopes. And we'll get into that in just a little bit, more. But there are about 6 different sub-regions that this valley, this 25-mile valley, has been kind of divided into based on the terroir, based on the soil types, and based on the climate and the exposure that it has. But the UNESCO designation, as Cristina said, was specifically for the art of these stone walls. It's the art, it's the beauty, it's the winding of the topography. It is an unbelievable effort of humanity over millennia. And it's a bit of the heritage of what they've inherited, but it's also, this stuff is constantly crumbling and shifting and constantly takes work to maintain and support and build these. And I interrupted Cristina when she was talking about how many square meters she has. And that it takes a decade. Yeah, it's just to put this in context, very few places outside of an apartment building or something are measured in square meters. There's very little agriculture that's measured in square meters. So, prego.
Do you think that it took me 10 years to collect 6 hectares? Oh.
6, 12, a little over 15 acres. Yeah.
Exactly. People have to know that they have to trust you, they have to understand if you work well, then they decided to entrust you with the vineyard, maybe first for rent and then for sale. It's not fast. It's the culture of mountain place, and it takes respect, in my opinion. The second step with foundation is the dossier, historic rural landscape, because today the Valtellina is the DOC area is a historic rural landscape. But people ask me, what are these our awards for? They are needed because some agricultural protection policies will be implemented only in 2 territories that have these awards. Now my ambition is to proceed with third dossier with a FAO, but okay, now we do to work for this with the minister and the region, Lombardy region, and after maybe it's possible to have also these awards. It's really important because, in my opinion, the biggest difficulty is getting the local people to recognize the value of this work. But I think is necessary now to have to recognize this value.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and it's funny that you'd have to convince the locals that live there and work there all the time about the value in their own backyard, and yet that's often the case. You know, whether it's land or water use or the way that rivers are managed, a lot of that has to be explained over and over to people. And just as an aside, as we're talking about these steep walls, the image that's up there right now, you can see this gentleman has the grapes on his back, and they're working up and down the stairs. There's just no way to really get, in many of the vineyards, it's all hand done. And it's not like you drive a tractor down and just load it up and drive right to the winery that's on the flats. It's very close to you. You really have to want to do this. You really have to have a dream and an aspiration and a desire to make this happen, because it ain't going to happen by accident. So the amount of love and attention that goes into this, not just to picking and harvesting, but year round, from pre in the winter to flowering and bud break and all the way through veration. There is so much work that goes on. And it's not just work in the vineyard, but you're actually repairing the walls themselves that are holding the vineyards up. So it's dramatic, and it's not that far of a drive from Milan for those of you who are up there. And there's a number of wineries up and down this east to west valley. So I would absolutely encourage all of you, given the opportunity, to head up there. And you can see Lake Como right there on the to the west, and put this on their agenda. Okay.
Exactly. For me, it's important to know as you say, the Valtellina is a longitudinal alpine valley, and is close between the Rhaetian Alps and the Orobian Alps. For this reason, the climate, the microclimate is perfect, because we are protected by the wind of the Orobian and the Rhaetian Alps. In my opinion, is really interesting to visit Valtellina to know that the millenary work, no? Because people here work in the vineyard only by hand. It's not possible to work by machine. Is a great millennial work, a unique testimony for cultural tradition. Mm-hmm. The Nebbiolo groove strong here. The name of Nebbiolo here is Chiavennasca, is a biotype of Nebbiolo. The breva come from the Lake Como, is the wind blowing in the valley east and dries the leaves of the vine. For this reason, is an ideal microclimate.
The ideal microclimate.
Ideal microclimate that boosts the development of grape bunches and grape ripening. We have 2 hours from Lake Como and 2 hours, 1 hour 30, not 2 hours, 2 hours 50 from Milan, for Tirano. In my opinion, also the climate change, the global warming has facilitated and improved the phenolic ripening of the grapes. And for some years, we have been witnessing a perfect ripening. This is really interesting. The origin of Chiavennasca in Valtellina date back to about 1,000 years ago, from the Benedictine monks in the monasteries, because the monks cultivated of vine, production of wine. Chiavennasca is the name, the dialect name in the origin is Chiavennasca. That is grape variety with more vigor. For this reason, Chiavennasca. Is Nebbiolo from the Alps. Is a noble, demanding vine which needs particular and climate condition that the region slopes can easily provide. Indeed, the plants group in Guyot, because we have the Guyot methods. This, for example, Pantelleria have 1,900 hours a year for sunlight. Sorry. In Valtellina is the same. Is a perfect condition for to grow vigorous, Nebbiolo grow vigorous.
Indeed.
Indeed. Okay.
Indeed, assolutamente. It's so just to back up a little bit. Just to put this in perspective. So we're talking about a biotype of Nebbiolo, Chiavennasca, and the origins of the name. And then let's imagine where this is. So basically, we're exploring Nebbiolo, and we're exploring Nebbiolo as it kind of wraps itself around kind of clockwise. So you've got Barbaresco, you've got Barolo, two of the most important Nebbiolo regions. You've got an area kind of around Gemme, no, where there's some Nebbiolo there. And then it continues off and into Valtellina, so just east of Lake Como along that beautiful valley. And it's an extraordinary place. And one of the words that I love that describes this, Cristina, which I think is used, I think even you refer to it sometime, is the type of viticulture is heroic. It's heroic. Voi siete eroi, perché siete avete deciso di fare questo tipo di viticoltura, no? It's, you know, it's kind of heroic to be out there doing that. And so this is a deep dive into Nebbiolo, much the way we can do a deep dive into Sangiovese, right? So in Sangiovese, just to draw a comparison with something that more people are familiar with, you've got Sangiovese, which would be in our portfolio represented by, you know, within Chianti Classico and Chianti Ruffina, with Badia Coltibuono and Salvapiana. You can get into Sangiovese Grosso, which is more Brunello, right? That area where Casino Dineri exemplifies. And then there's also Prugnolo Gentile, which is Vino Nobile, and Poliziano. So those are a number of different expressions of a very similar idea. And this is another one, but we're doing a dive and an exploration into Nebbiolo by doing this giant tour, Barbaresco, Barolo, the area around Gemme, and then all the way up into Valtellina. And instead of it being called Prugnolo Gentile or Sangiovese Grosso, this biotype is called Chiavennasca. Okay.
The main difference between Chiavennasca and Nebbiolo to Piemonte, I think, is the terroir. Because in Valtellina we are in a mountain, in Langhe are hilly area. The subsoil also is different because in Valtellina we have sandy soil. In my opinion, the Valtellina have more finesse, not a lot of potenza, come si dice?
Power,
exactly.
Yeah.
It's different because Langhe also is very elegant, but Valtellina plays more on finesse and then on power compared to the Langhe wines.
Mm-hmm.
Our vineyard are in 7 hectares now, of which 3 hectares are located in Valgella, in Teglio, 2 hectares in Bianzone, 1 is Valtellina Superiore Bianzone, 1 hectare in Sassella, and 1 hectare in Inferno. Normally people ask me the difference between Valtellina Superiore and the subzone. I I think you have to think of the Valtellina di OCG as a large set, in which there are 5 subsets. This is the 5 subzones. The difference are, in my opinion, on 2 levels. The 5 subzones have Maroggia, Inferno, Sassella, Grumello, and Valgella. But the difference are defined on 2 levels. We can speak of altitude and position of the vineyard. Both are fundamental in defining the type of grapes and therefore the finished product. All my vineyards have red-berried Nebbiolo Chiavennasca, completely with the sandy soil loam. We have normally low water retention and high permeability. In the vineyard, the plants in my vineyard are rigorously positioned in the traditional mood, ritocchino, and the terrace communicate with each other through the stone stairs. This required exclusively manual maintenance. That in a year, if you think we have 1,500 hours per hectare. For example, in Tuscany, I think work by machine in Tuscany, obviously, we have, I think, 300 hours per hectare. This is a lot of effort and job. Our vineyards are 30 to 70 years old, the vine in the vineyard. The most interesting works of the last 3 years in the restoration of a vineyard at 700 meters above sea level that was abandoned and is now completely recovering.
Right.
This is most interesting work in the last 3 years. And normally this vineyard is perfect for sforzato harvest because we have more ventilation and low humidity. For this reason, it is perfect for drying the grapes after, because sforzato for sforzato we dry the grapes.
So we'll talk about that just a little bit. The idea of drying grapes, that's one thing that doesn't happen, obviously, in the Langhe, in Barolo and Barbasco. They're not drying their grapes. They bring them up to maturation, pick them, and make beautiful Barbasco and Barolo out of them. But this area, as we're seeing, this is obviously a fall shot with some snow in the background, and the vines are in repose here. But, you know, this is a very different area, and sometimes not dissimilar from other areas where people choose to dry some of their fruit and thereby concentrating the berries. This is an area that can really benefit from that, but just a small percentage of the wines are made in that style. And one thing that I was just thinking about this, Cristina, and I was thinking about when I first started tasting and becoming aware of the wines from Valtellina, there were very few. Okay, it's been around for thousands of years. There's a lot of heroic viticulture, but a lot of that heroic viticulture was from small farmers. As you said, it's measured in square meters. And those small farmers didn't have enough land to do anything with this. They just farmed it, and they couldn't make their own labels. They didn't have their own facilities. They couldn't build something, and they couldn't get enough fruit to create their own label, their own entity. And so they were, by default, they were forced to sell them, as happens all over the world in grape growing areas, either to a co-op or to a particular winery that's interested in buying the fruit. So I will stay positive today. I will stay positive, but I will say that with previously there was one large winery that dominated Valtellina, and as small wineries kind of crawled out from underneath this behemoth, and some were able to go ahead and create their own entities, gather a little bit of a little bit of land, and make their own wines. That's really when Valtellina really began to show its best. People were working for themselves. People were creating their interpretation of their vineyards. And maybe they had vineyards in a few of the different areas. But most of them just had, as Cristina said, a small amount of vineyard, kind of above their home, above their village, above whatever their grandfather had access to years ago. And there was very little development. It all went to one large winery that dominated, and in some ways maybe even repressed the amount of investment that was able to go on, because they weren't willing to pay very much. People weren't making that much. And things have changed a lot in the last 20 years for the better, which I think is extraordinary. And it's this transition, this dynamic transition within the valley, and people taking a risk and an opportunity to go ahead and build their own, to see their dreams come to fruition all the way to the bottle, has really benefited all of us. And so we're seeing more labels than ever before. We're seeing more expression than ever before. It's more exciting. There's more development through the 5 subzones within Valtellina. And Cristina is kind of, I think, a perfect example of this, this new wave, this new opportunities of dynamic owner growers who are looking to create and express and put out into the world what they believe in and what they're working on. And not a lot of this gets out of Valtellina, not a lot of it gets out of Northern Italy, and very little of it gets to the United States as a result. But that's really the dream, going back to my initial question of why is this for Dalla Terra? Because it matters, because it's important, because it's one of the best examples, I think, of deep diving into a particular area with a really delicate, I think the word that Cristina used was finesse, that these wines exhibit. And so, today is just a little bit of a teaser, just to kind of bring it into your orbit, looking at this and hearing Cristina's words and looking at these images. We do bring in a number of her wines into the United States, and we've only been doing this for a very short time, and the pandemic kind of slowed obviously all that down from last year. But keep your eyes out. And obviously you can find a lot of information on this on our website in terms of where it's available. You can look by distributor, you can look by your city, you can look by state, and you can find who currently carries this. But by all means, feel free to reach out to either your Dalla Terra regional manager, if you have a relationship there, or to a local store and just tell them what you're interested in looking for. But this is a really beautiful expression of this valley as a whole, because I said earlier, very few people have vineyards in the various subzones. Giusto? Loro concentrano in una zona in particolare, whereas at Scerscé, we're blessed because we have a pretty good overview of what the valley is able to do that. And the giant kind of behemoth winemaker or winery that I mentioned out there in that area is called Nino Negri, and Nino Negri has their name up on the hillside, and they do a lot of this. And for decades and decades and decades, they were basically, paying very little and buying up all the available fruit. And it served a purpose, because it was important for people to be able to sell what they had. But it's a single private winery. It's not a cooperativa. It's not a co-op, which is what's found in a lot of other areas. And so that's important to know. It served a purpose, but I think that purpose is long past. And I'm very interested to see in what Cristina and her neighbors are now beginning to develop in this new generation. Dico bene?
Yes, we have Nino Negri is a big winery, and after in the last 3 years, 5 years, grew a lot of the new small winery. It's interesting because we change a vision, and also we maintain the territory. No, it's really interesting in my opinion.
Cristina, you said you have a vision and that you're going to maintain the territory, and your organization has to do with preserving the beauty of these incredible stone walls, and you have small children and the future, and all of these things come together. But did you create some sort of a graphical way of understanding what are the ethics of your winery? What are the ethics of the way that you choose to do business? Oh my God, you did. That's amazing. Can you talk us through some of this?
Se capisco bene, mi hai chiesto come sarà la mia visione della bellezza di questo territorio.
Sì, praticamente tu hai creato qui un piano di lavoro di come vuoi essere, no? The way that you want to be in the world with your winery.
I think my wine is the face of my personality, and I think also my vineyards, because I preserve I search to preserve the beauty, and every day I ask me if I have also a question for me, if is possible to change the situation, to improve the biodiversity. For example, we have integrated pest, is the lotta integrata in English. I think is integrated pest.
Integrated pest management. Yeah.
Exactly. This is an interesting step because normally because we work only by hand. For these reasons, it's not possible. It's possible, but is not simple to have fast the biological. Okay, because if normal we have 1,500 hours per hectare, imagine it with the biologic system, maybe 2,500, 2,000 hours, but is not preconcetto, come si dice preconcetto?
Like a preconceived idea.
Exactly. It's not a preconceived of biological. I think it's interesting to work every day the vine, to work the vineyard, and after to do the treatment, implementing the various precautions. If it's possible, not toxicities for humans is better, and with integrated pest it's possible. It's possible working this way.
Right. It's kind of like the Hippocratic oath that doctors are required to take. At least over here, it goes back to ancient Greece, and the first thing is promise to do no harm. That was kind of Google's original idea. We will do no harm, and then I think that went out the window a few $1 billion ago. But this is a great example of that. First, do no harm, and then I just love the way there's so much thought and care and precision that goes into what you want to do, but how you're going to achieve those things. A lot of people talk about sustainability and things like that, but this is a really beautiful, detailed explanation of how you're working, and some of the broader ideas, at least that you're considering as you're making decisions. The considerazione per come avete già deciso di lavorare.
I think every day I decided to improve my works. My ethical charter speak about this very clear. The sustainability is interesting in human sustainability first, because I think without people, the winery is nothing. People work with joy. I hope
Right.
with joy. It's important. And after we try to improve every integrated production, clean energy, and sulfite reduction, because now we use also the Nomacork tap for this reason, because it's possible to control the sulfite. We work with low sulfite in our wine, in every 6 wine. Also in Sforzato is not comune, is not for a decision for every winery. Is a risk.
It is a risk. It is a risk, because so you're looking to work with very low sulfur levels, and you're working with Nomacork, not just pure cork, but Nomacork, which is a hybrid solution, which is a really great idea. And
it's not plastic, because people ask, is plastic? No, it's not plastic. It's polymer of sugar cane. It's different. It's not the same. It's green, completely green.
And it does not make the wine sweet, even though it comes from sugar cane. It's really the cellulose. It's the fibers from the cane.
Polymer di sugar cane.
Yeah, right. It's exactly. So
and
those
also
are
the age of the vineyard is very important for me to maintain, because it's possible to have the new vineyards, no? Okay,
right.
But the vine that have 70 years is important to maintain and to grow in safety.
So let me just touch on that for a minute. So relatively new winery, relatively new endeavor. It's taken you 10 plus years to get 7 hectares of land for 16, 17 acres. And yet I think it's important to reiterate that many of these vineyards have a certain amount of history. These vineyards are 30 to 70 years old, the vineyards that you've been able to acquire, which really takes a lot of trust, because you're asking a family that's taking care of this vineyard for the, for even if the vineyard's 30 years, it's probably been in their family for well over 100. And to trust you as being the next, we say in English, the custodian of this land, custodio, no? And you are the person going to take care of this. But it takes it's personal relationships when they decide to sell to you. It's not just about money. It's about believing in the person.
If you wanted to do a business for money, Valtellina is not the good idea. Valtellina
exactly. As the French would say, it's rapport. Rapporto.
Yes.
So of these vines, because you've taken on vineyards that have been alive for a long time. These vineyards have been alive for decades. These vineyards have been trained and farmed in a certain way. How are you handling the viticulture, the actual farming of vineyards that have been in this unique area for so long? Are you changing over the years the way that some of these vineyards have been farmed? Have some of these vineyards probably been neglected because maybe they weren't, taken care of in the best way possible? Or maybe the person died a while ago, the only person in the family that loved the vineyards, and the children said, this is not for us. So you have, how has the farming and the actual viticulture been adapted to these vineyards?
No, I try to speak about this before, because it's not simple to collect the hectares for me, because is not my family is not born in Valtellina, and for this reason I don't have the grandmother or grandfather with a vineyard.
Right.
And when I start, I do to mostrare molta fiducia, mostrare molto, come si dice?
You have to demonstrate a lot of trust.
Esatto.
Yeah.
That I work a lot and also well, and maybe after people decided to only rent, not sale. Sale maybe when they died. Maybe it's not simple. But I think my passion is and my ambition also is really clear, no?
Beautiful, beautiful. Cristina, we've got about 10 minutes left or so in our hour. If there are questions, those will be forwarded to me. If anyone has any specific questions or things that were asked that I missed, we can circle back and talk about some of those things here and now. But I guess my message to folks is take a look for this, look out for these, search these things out, because they're not just going to end up on your front door by accident. There are a few lovers of this part of Italy who are passionate about this, who have visited it, who I would call champions of Valtellina here in the United States, but they're few and they're far between. Some of those champions are writers or journalists. Some of these champions are restaurant owners or wine buyers for restaurants. A few are retailers that are always keep a little tiny slot in their wine shops for wines from Valtellina. We thank those people, and we're looking forward to more opportunities to share this as more and more of our restaurant partners are able to open up later on this year. And it will be a long time before we are able to really build and grow the foundation. Because for somebody to put these wines on their list, especially now, it's a challenge. Let's be honest. It's not like putting Chardonnay or Pinot Noir or something out to them that everyone's familiar with. So you have to, as a restaurateur, you have to believe in this. You have to really want to do this. And so a shout out and thanks to those who believe in diversity and believe in giving an opportunity. That's not true. That's not what I want to say. I don't want to say believe in. Let me put it, I think everybody does, but let me just say that are in a position to do that now. That's probably the best way to put that. And hopefully we will have more opportunities to do so in the future. But a big shout out and a thank you to all of those who have been able to keep these wines available throughout the last year, and hopefully more in the coming years. So a thank you to all of those folks. And again, a big shout out to our obviously our Dalla Terra team, but also our distributors that are willing to take a chance. And we don't ask them to do a lot that we don't believe wholeheartedly in. And it's obviously twice as difficult to launch something during a pandemic when you really need the individual restaurant sommelier to go ahead and present these wines. And this would be a great pairing for these different dishes or the style of restaurant that's there. So just a big note of gratitude for those that have brung us this far. And we will continue to move forward in this. But this shot that's up on the screen right now with the 6 different wines, this is Nebbiolo is the wine that is most diverse, most well distributed here in the United States, and it's one of the foundation building blocks for the wines. And those are probably going to be the best distributed wines at this point. But as we move forward, we've got a few minutes here, Cristina. Can you start with maybe Essenza and say a few words about that wine? And
Sforzato, maybe.
Yes, Sforzato.
Essenza is Valtellina Superiore 10G. If it is important, don't forget the Valtellina born with Valtellina Superiore, because Sforzato and the Rosso di Valtellina born after. for me is interesting wine because it's the traditional wines, not to be represented in perfect mood, the Valtellina. Now I think in the United States we have the vintage 2016. Normally we have the harvest period in the end of October, rigorously by end, but in my opinion the Essenza is very drinkable wine, is perfect match with okay, carne is meat, no meat.
Yeah, meat.
Okay, is meat
Carne.
or also the pizzoccheri, but in the United States it's not possible. No, it's possible to have a pizzoccheri. It's not impossible. And also the fish, but not the fish, grasso, pesce grasso.
Kind of fattier fishes. Fish yeah.
Salmon, for example.
Yeah, like salmon.
Normally we have the aging in a troncoconic oak, 50 hectoliters for 2 years and 6 months in a bottle in the dark, and after we sell. Sforzato is different wine, is a top of my gamma. The name is Infinito, is another DOCG because Valtellina is the unique area in Italy that have 2 DOCG. Valtellina
That's a good point, right?
And Sforzato di Valtellina. Sforzato is a wine with we have the yielding wine under 50%. Normally we have the harvest in the end of September now. We pick the grapes in boxes per kilo, and we dry the grapes for 2 months. We press. We use the tonneau for 2 years, and after we put this wine in a bottle in the dark for 1 year, and we sell. I think also in United States now we have 2016. The vintage is 2016. Is okay. We dry the grapes, but is very drinkable wine. Vero Brian is not is my style. Okay, I like the wine very drinkable, very vertical wine, and that to preserve the fruit. I like Infinito. The name is Infinito.
Right. It's infinity, yes.
But
it's infinite.
bother after finish. Okay.
That's right. That's right. Beautiful. Are there, as we're wrapping up here, if there are any questions, shoot them to us. Otherwise, I think, we had a lot of information to cover because, as I said earlier, there's very little that we expect people to be familiar with. We're not starting from a basis of understanding or recognition, really, of where it is and what it is. And we say it's Chiavennasca, but it's really a biotype of Nebbiolo and how it arcs around. And the images that we saw today that were put up there of just these dramatic landscapes, I think that's really what tells the picture. And the people, yeah, look at this. I mean, to get in these valleys, first of all, there's amazing restaurants. There's wonderful hotels.
This is Giro Poggio. It's not Rittochino. This is Rittochino. This is
okay.
Giro Poggio. It's different situation for to groove the vineyard.
Right. So two different.
It is possible work by machine, but not trattore. A little machine.
Yeah, no tractors.
Exactly.
So they're small hand. Yeah.
We have 800 hours per hectare. This is Rittochino, and here we have 1,200 hours per hectare because it's impossible to work by machine here. Impossible.
Beautiful.
Bello.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Let's do this again in person when you come back to America. L'anno prossimo a questo punto. And I also want to take a minute and just wish you and your family and your friends all the best as we move forward. For those of you that are still here listening and thinking about this area, Cristina comes from an area called Bergamo, which is kind of partway between Milan and Venice, right there, just due south of Sondrio, actually. It was one of the hardest hit places for COVID, and it was all in the news a year ago today. So we've made a little bit of progress, even though Italy just shut down again through Pasqua. But now
I come in US if I survive to AstraZeneca.
Oh, you'll be fine.
Okay.
We're just waiting for everyone to get their vaccines, and it's taking longer than people anticipated. But we wish you and your colleagues and your friends and your family all the best health. And we will get through this. And we look forward to opportunities to share your story and your wines here with the United States market. It's just it's an amazing. It's an amazing story. It's an amazing place. It's amazing history, and the wines are absolutely worthy of the passion that you put into them, and the people that find them and discover them, the passion that they bring to it as well.
People ask about Riserva. Riserva is the next step in US.
Right. There you go. Look at that. Is that you on the label?
I'm on the label, not
Is
the
that-
miss the flower, the grapes. Not
She's the woman in the vineyards. Look at her.
I love this wine because I said to you we start with Valtellina vineyard. For this reason, I chose to dedicate the Riserva to Valtellina area. For this reason, and for this reason, I changed the label because I think is a different concept of this wine.
We love it. It's the passion. It's the creativity. It's being one with the vineyard and growing up in it and letting it grow through you. And it's just it's a very, very small production. So we do have a little bit of this. Benissimo. Altre cose? Well,
I don't know.
No. Well, I think we'll be respectful of people's time and the time
If
that
you
they
have a
dedicated to
question
us.
in chat, I don't know if. Grazie.
I think we're good. I think we're good. Cristina, grazie.
Grazie a voi.
Our team
Thank
at
you to
Dalla
all.
Terra and our distributors and our customers that are so passionate about these wines in this region. And to all of you, drink globally and act locally to make things a little bit better for tomorrow. Grazie.
Grazie a te, a tutti.
Ciao.